The Reserve Bank has likened the improving conditions in the economy to a clearing storm. While the effects of the pandemic dissipate, structural challenges remain, holding back the local economy to achieving its potential. The central bank says inflation seems contained for now, and they are placing expected economic growth slightly higher than earlier forecasts. The economy is projected to expand by 1.1% this year, rising to 1.8% in 2026. The higher forecast is based on the improved electricity supply alongside better functioning logistics sector, lower inflation and interest rates.
Here at home, a lot has happened over the past 6 months. Load shedding has been suspended since late March. This, along with the unwinding of election-related risks, so most sentiment indicators become more upbeat. Also, inflation fell to around the midpoint in August, and the South African Reserve Bank eased monetary policy slightly in September. Nevertheless, structural challenges remain.
Midvaal Municipality criticized the Reserve Bank's inflation targeting, saying middle-income households are failing to pay for services due to, amongst others, high administered prices and high interest rates. While SAFTU's Zwelinzima Vavi says he disagrees with the Reserve Bank's interpretation of its mandate.
The last 6 months, we've issued more than 16,000 cut-off notices primarily to middle-income households. And when we ask households why they are struggling, they state 4 things. The Eskom escalations are double-digit. You'll know this. 15% was passed on directly to households. That is 9% above your upper average of inflation. Rand water escalations was 12%. That's double the inflation target for households. The average petrol price increase year on year is above double-digit inflation. And then the last thing people state when they tell us why they are battling is the interest rates on bonds, cars, credit cards, and loans. Now, ordinarily, I don't have a problem when people come forward and they state this, but I felt a moral responsibility to come here today and say to you, you remain tone deaf to the plight of the average middle-income household in South Africa.
I know that you don't like what I'm saying, but perhaps why South Africa finds itself in a precipice at this particular moment, with a multiple of crises and risking implosion every day, with all of us should be praying that that implosion is not taking place yet, is in part because of the stance you are taking in terms of pursuance of the mandate that you are pursuing. So we've come to, even though we have already said we need to discuss, to book our appointment with you, and so that we can have a discussion.
The central bank says inflation hurts the poor most, and interest rates are an instrument to bring inflation down. It says the major drivers of the high unemployment in the country are more than just monetary policy.
Imagine counterfactually, you have an economy with a 30% unemployment rate. Imagine that the current interest rate at 8% was 5%. The repo rate was 5% or 4%. Do you really think you're going to bring unemployment rate down from 30% to 20%? It raises the question, and it's a paradigm that I think one can have a debate about. It raises the question of that monetary policy really starts from the assumption that if this economy has a steady state unemployment rate at 30%, it has to assess whether, despite a 30% unemployment rate, inflation is ticking up, because the 30% unemployment says that the supply capacity of this economy is limited. It says that the unemployment rate has very little to do with monetary policy.
Headline inflation is now expected to average 4.6% this year, down from an earlier 5.1%. Gloria Sefako, SABC News, Johannesburg.